Seated. So I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, demon possession seemed to be all the rage in the movies. Right? So we had The Exorcist, and we had Amityville Horror, and we had all these number of movies showing us, so they said, what it meant to be possessed by the devil or demon. And those people did horrible things. And then especially in The Exorcist, we have this fight, right, between the Catholic priest and this young girl who has been possessed, and they fight throughout the entire movie. It's a battle the whole entire time. And they're screaming, and there's pea soup, and there's all sorts of terrible things that happen in this movie. And that is what many of us grew up thinking about what being possessed or having an unclean spirit looked like. When we walked into our churches, when we walked into our schools, when we went about our daily life, we weren't really thinking, oh, that person might have an unclean spirit. Pretty much we thought that their head would have to turn around for us to know for sure. But it seems as though Jesus, in the gospel this morning, is sharing with us a slightly different story about what it might mean for someone to have an unclean spirit. And how what upsets unclean spirits in the gospel today is coming face to face with the truth of who Jesus Christ is and what God's love means in the world. Now remember where Jesus is this morning. Jesus is in a synagogue. He is teaching in a synagogue with all of the good, holy, and religious people who came to be gathered there. And one of them who was there, a man we are told with an unclean spirit, recognizes Jesus immediately. He recognizes Jesus, and he's got a problem with it. He's got a problem with it, and he calls out Jesus for who he is. He sees him. Because to something that is unclean, what is light and what is clean is completely unbearable. Those two things have a really hard time sitting in the same space together. So Jesus knows what's going on. Jesus calls this unclean spirit out of this man, and the spirit, as it goes, convulses him, causes him great pain, but then leaves the man, and leaves everyone there in the synagogue astounded. Because you see, what Jesus did not do is start throwing holy water. He didn't lay his hands on this man and say any kind of particular special prayers. He didn't go out and get all of the accoutrement that we have these days for exorcisms. What he did is he told the truth. He called out that unclean spirit for what it was, sitting right there in the synagogue all that whole time. And that unclean spirit could not be in the same space with Jesus. Now you might be surprised, but priests actually have people come to them very often worried about whether or not they or their children or someone they know is possessed. I'm quite serious. I have people who have come to my office off the street that I didn't know, worried about their 4-year-old child who was talking to an imaginary person. She was convinced that he was possessed or was on his way to being possessed and talked to me and wanted to know what I thought about an exorcism for her child. I didn't say that some 4-year-olds maybe, but not particularly her 4-year-old. You see, as we had a further conversation, it came to light that she and her husband were going through a terrible divorce. This child was only experiencing the stress and pain of his life in a way that he could not express or explain in any other way. And so he was looking for comfort. And because his mother was terrified of what demons might do to her child and in her life, she expressed it as worrying about him being completely possessed. I recently had a man come into my office and sit down and tell me about how he felt assailed by the devil when he went down to sleep at night. He couldn't sleep. He was in great pain. And he had tried fighting over and over and over again. Fighting. A battle between good and evil. He tried all the tactics that he knew, all the things that he could find, yet nothing gave him any peace. So I suggested to him something that was suggested to me. Something that comes from ancient traditions of the desert fathers and mothers of how we can be called into battling those unclean spirits in our everyday life. And what they suggest is that rather than taking the fighting stance of battle, that we somehow turn towards that which is evil and express thanks. Think about that for a second. We express thanks, and what that thank you is thank you for giving me the opportunity to show my humility, my love, and my care to another human being. That rather than fighting, we turn towards that which might be trying to hurt us, and without closing down, but without allowing ourselves to be completely abused and hurt, we thank God for the opportunity to share our love again. This was expressed by an old monk who tells the story of a monastery. And he said there was this one particular monk that everybody hated. Right? Monks living together a lot. Sometimes someone gets on your nerves all the time because you're together all the time. But this one particular monk was really annoying to almost everyone else. And so every single day, some monk would come to the abbot and say, "Can you please ask him to leave? Can you please ask him to leave? Because he's causing us such pain. He's really an annoyance." The abbot said, "If that is what you truly want, then we can do that. But I will invite someone else in who is just as annoying as he is, who might give you even more problems than he has." And they were a little confused. They're like, "Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Because we want to have peace in our life. We want to be able to sit and pray." And he said, "Yes, but if this man goes away, how will you ever practice patience? How will you ever practice love? How will you ever practice compassion and caring for someone else who might give you a hard time or might annoy you beyond anything that you know you can be annoyed with?" And this seems to me to be the message of our gospel this morning, what Jesus is sharing with us. This man sat in the synagogue for a long time with no conflict whatsoever, likely because he had never been faced with the type of love that Jesus brought into the world and into that place. But once he was faced with it, He started acting out in really terrible ways. Who knows all the things he might have done before Jesus came along? But Jesus did not just say, "Hey, you, buddy, hit the road. Get out." He called out that which was unclean. And that man was reconciled in that place and able to continue on with that path of holiness and likely righteousness as he went forward. So in our day, in our life, we should call upon the Spirit of Jesus when we are faced with these things, when we are faced with those who clearly have been hurt or injured or damaged in some way, that they bring pain and hurt and injury to others. To not start a battle, to not fight, but to bring towards them the love of Christ and the light of Jesus that cannot be denied. We are the ones who hold that light. We are the ones who share that gift. We are the ones who tell the stories and who continue to live the stories each and every day as we walk on this path, as we walk on the way of Jesus Christ. So go forth. Go forth into the world and show that light. Amen.
Amen.